They said I betrayed my family by leaving. But what they didn't understand was, I didn't leave to escape them. I left to finally meet the version of me they never believed in. The morning I left my hometown, I remember standing outside my childhood home, bags in the back seat, heart somewhere between my chest and my throat. The sky was overcast, like it could not decide if it wanted to cry with me or not. That felt fitting. I had told everyone I was leaving for a job interview in the city, just a weekend trip. That was the only way they would not chain me down with guilt and passive-aggressive casseroles. In reality, I had packed everything I owned into a rusty old Civic that barely made it past 60. I had no job lined up, no apartment, just enough savings to last a couple of months, and this stubborn, stupid dream that there had to be something more out there than working at the same hardware store my dad did, dying in the same house I was born in. My mom hugged me at the door. It was brief. She whispered something like, "Do not forget where you come from." My dad just grunted from the porch. Said, "You will be back. They always come back." He was not talking to me. He was talking at me, like I was already a disappointment he was trying not to claim. My brother, Nate, would not even look at me. He stood by the truck, arms folded, chewing sunflower seeds like he was watching the clock run out on a game he had already won. I told him I would call. He shrugged, said sure. I meant it, though. I really did. I promised myself I would check in every Sunday, send photos, keep them updated. It was not supposed to be goodbye forever. But when the people you love make you feel guilty just for wanting something different, even a phone call starts to feel like a battlefield. Still, I tried. First few weeks, I texted. No one replied. I called. Got sent to voicemail. My mom finally responded one day with just 4 words. "Do not get lost." That stuck with me. I did not know if it was a warning or a wish. As I crossed state lines that day, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone chasing after me, waving a hand, telling me I could come back. No one did. The only thing behind me was a long, empty stretch of highway and a small town I had just outgrown. I told myself this was courage, that leaving everything I knew behind was brave. But the truth? It also felt a little like betrayal, like I had abandoned people who never really knew me to begin with. Still, I pressed the gas a little harder, because ahead of me, somewhere in the middle of that concrete and chaos, I believed a different life was waiting, and I had to find out if I was right. But what I did not know back then was that chasing freedom would come with a price I never saw coming. The first thing I learned about the city was that nobody cares who you are. That was both terrifying and liberating. I landed in Cleveland. Not New York, not LA, just Cleveland. People always wrinkle their nose when I say that, like it is some kind of failure. But for me, it was perfect. Big enough to disappear, small enough to survive. I found a room on the west side, shared kitchen, bathroom down the hall, walls thin enough to hear your neighbor's dreams if you listened hard enough. Rent was cheap because the heater barely worked, and every time it rained, the smell of mildew crept in through the ceiling tiles. I did not complain. I had a door that locked. That was more than I ever had back home. The first week, I walked to every business I could find, resume in hand, shirt half wrinkled from being shoved into a backpack. Nobody called back. A few smiled politely. One guy told me I looked like I was running from something. Maybe I was. I ate dollar ramen and kept my receipts like they meant something. Spent hours in public libraries scrolling job boards, rewriting the same cover letter to sound more impressive than it really was. I was not proud. I just needed one yes. It came on a rainy Tuesday from a guy named Calvin who ran a copy shop downtown. Said he needed someone who would actually show up and not steal toner. I told him I was his guy. That job paid just above minimum wage, but it felt like winning the lottery. I showed up early, stayed late, learned how to refill printers, laminate without bubbles, even fixed the ancient fax machine nobody touched since 2003. It was not glamorous, but every paycheck felt like a middle finger to everyone back home who said I would come crawling back. I called my mom that week, told her I got a job. She said, "So you are working with printers now?" Like it was a punchline. Then silence. "No, I am proud of you." No, good job. Just disappointment wrapped in a question. Nate never called. My dad texted me a link to a job opening at the lumber yard and wrote, "Real work if you want it." But I kept going. I started making friends. Jen, who managed the bakery next door and snuck me muffins. Marcus, the night janitor who played saxophone during his breaks and told stories about Chicago like it was heaven. We were all misfits in our own way, just trying to make something of ourselves in a city that forgot our names the moment we arrived. One night, I sat on the fire escape, eating cold noodles from the container, and I realized something. I did not miss home. I missed the idea of it. The version I used to daydream about before it crushed me. And for the first time, I felt a strange thing creeping in. Something close to peace. But peace, I would learn, never lasts. Not when your past starts clawing its way into your future. It started with a Facebook message. Not even from family. It was a girl I used to know, Katie Mendez. We had science class together back in 10th grade. She sent a short message. Saw your name pop up. Your mom says you're doing something strange in the city. Hope you're doing all right. Something strange. That phrase stuck in my head like a splinter. I had not posted anything wild. Just a photo of me and Jen outside the bakery with cinnamon dust on our aprons, grinning like idiots. Another of me in front of Lake Erie with the caption, finally catching my breath. Maybe that was the part that upset them. Katie meant no harm. She probably thought she was being kind. But I knew what that message meant. It meant my name was being passed around again, in kitchens and church foyers, during small-town gossip hours. It meant people were whispering that I had gone off the rails, abandoned my roots, thought I was better than everyone else. Back home, doing something different always translated to doing something wrong. I called my mom later that week, mostly out of guilt. She picked up on the second ring. How is your cult life going? She asked before I could even say hello. It was a joke, probably, but her voice was too sharp to be playful. I told her I was working, paying bills, making friends. She said, well, Nate just got promoted at the plant. Real job, steady pay, close to home. I did not bite. I asked how Dad was. Same as always, she said. Still waiting for you to come to your senses. I hung up soon after. No fight. Just a cold breeze through the line, like someone had opened a window in the middle of a snowstorm and left it that way. Over the next few weeks, more people from the past started reaching out. Old classmates, a pastor from church, even my Aunt Jo, who never called unless someone died. They all had the same tone, soft concern wrapped around sharp edges. We miss seeing you around. Your mom says you do not call much. Nate says you act like you are too good for everyone now. Every message felt like a brick being dropped in my chest. And every time I ignored one, the guilt twisted a little tighter. But the more they talked, the more I realized they never actually asked how I was doing. They just wanted me to feel bad for leaving. I started dreading Sunday nights. Those were the times I had promised myself I would call home. But now, I stared at the phone like it was a live wire. The city was not perfect. The job was still exhausting. The apartment still leaked. But I had built something here. Friends. Routine. Space to grow. Back home, I was a ghost who had wandered too far from the grave. And then came the letter. Handwritten, no return address, sealed in guilt and nostalgia. Inside was one sentence that would change everything. It showed up on a Thursday. A plain envelope, no return address. Just my name, spelled in my mom's handwriting, blocky and neat, like she was still writing permission slips for grade school field trips. No stamp, either. Someone must have dropped it off in person. Inside was one piece of paper, lined, torn from a notebook, written in dark blue ink. Your grandfather is dying. He asks about you every day. Thought you should know. No love, Mom. No signature at all. Just that. I sat on the edge of my bed, the city humming through the thin apartment walls, holding that letter like it might bite me. I had not seen Grandpa Joe in over 4 years. He was the only one who ever stuck up for me growing up. He taught me how to fish, how to fix a busted fuse, how to listen more than I talked. When I left town, he told me quietly in the garage, do not look back unless you plan on turning around. I never knew if that meant he was proud or just warning me. I stared at that letter for a long time. At first, I felt nothing. Then I felt everything. I called the hospital, gave them his name, asked to speak to a nurse, maybe a social worker. They patched me through to a volunteer who said he was stable but weak. Hospice had been called in. It would not be long. I asked if he was asking for me by name. She said yes. Every morning, I hung up and stood in my tiny kitchen, staring at the fridge like it held some kind of answer. On it were pictures, me, Jen, Marcus holding a pizza the size of a tire. Little proof that I had built something, that I had become someone. And yet here I was, 27 years old, feeling like a scared kid again. I took the next morning off work. Told Calvin I had a family emergency. He did not ask questions. just handed me a sticky note with the name of a bus station that offered cheap rides downstate. The ride home took 8 hours. The roads looked the same. Flat. Long familiar in a way that felt like a warning. When I stepped off the bus, the cold air smelled like mud and burning leaves. Same as it ever was. I had not even made it halfway down Main Street before I heard my name. A woman in a truck, waving out the window. "Saw your mom yesterday," she shouted. "She said you finally came to your senses." I forced a smile, but my stomach was already knotting. I had not even knocked on a single door yet. And when I finally walked into that hospital room, the first thing my grandfather said shattered every memory I thought I had of him. The room was dim, except for a narrow beam of sunlight leaking through the blinds. Machines beeped softly, almost apologetically, like they knew they were intruding on something personal. Grandpa Joe looked small, not just sick, shrunk. Like the years had taken parts of him I did not remember giving up. His hands used to be thick and strong, stained with motor oil and tobacco. Now they trembled when he raised a finger to point at me. "You finally came back," he said. His voice cracked, but not from emotion, from dryness. "Age." I walked closer, unsure what to say. Part of me expected warmth, a smile, maybe even pride. What I got was something else. He looked me over, slow and squinting. Then he said, "You forgot how to dress like a man." I blinked, thought maybe I misheard. He gestured toward my sneakers and jacket. "You look like you work at a gas station." I swallowed hard, laughed once. "Well, good to see you too." He chuckled, coughed, then said, "You left, and everything went to hell." It landed heavy, like he had waited months just to throw that sentence in my face. "What do you mean?" He stared at the ceiling, like it held all the reasons. "Your mom stopped cooking Sunday dinner. Your dad barely speaks. Nate." "Well, Nate's been trying, but he is not you." I did not know what to do with that. I wanted to say, then why did everyone act like I was the problem? But I stayed quiet. He sighed. "You always thought you were better. Always dreaming of somewhere else." "I just wanted something different," I said soft. "And we wanted you here." I shook my head. "You wanted me to stay where I was told. That is not the same thing." He closed his eyes. The room filled with a silence I could not touch. Finally, he muttered, "You were supposed to take care of this family." That made me snap. Not loud, just sharp. I was taking care of myself. For once. He opened his eyes again. And for a second, I thought I saw something familiar there. A flicker of the man who used to sneak me candy after dinner. The man who taught me how to hold a wrench, not just use it. "Maybe that is what scared us," he said quietly. I sat beside him and held his hand. It felt like paper and bones. Fragile. He did not say another word after that. Just squeezed my fingers once before drifting off into a nap. I sat there for another hour, staring out that narrow window, wondering how many other conversations in my life had been built on misunderstandings we were too stubborn to fix. But the real surprise came when I walked out of the hospital and saw who was waiting for me in the lobby, arms crossed, eyes cold, and a message that would unravel everything I thought I understood. Nate was waiting, leaning against the wall near the vending machines, arms crossed like a bouncer at a backwoods bar. Same old denim jacket. Same glare I remembered from when we were teenagers, arguing over who got the bigger slice of mom's lasagna. He did not say a word at first, just let his eyes scan me, head to toe, like he was trying to figure out if the rumors were true. I beat him to it. "You look exactly the same." He pushed off the wall. "You don't." The words were not a compliment. I nodded. "Guess that's the point." He smirked, but it was bitter. "You got soft." I looked him in the eye. "And you stayed safe." We stood there like that for a second. Two brothers who barely recognized each other anymore. Then he pulled something from his pocket. A crumpled photo. I knew it before he handed it to me. Us. Me and him. Sitting on the porch. I was maybe 17. He had just turned 15. Our dog, Scout, between us. Summer sun making our faces squint. I looked happy. So did he. "I keep this in my wallet," he said. "Not because I like looking at your face. Because I need to remember the last time we were still a family." That hit harder than I expected. I tried to explain. "I didn't leave to hurt anyone, Nate." He stepped closer. "You just left. And never looked back." "That's not true." I called. I texted. No one answered. "Because you made it clear we weren't good enough anymore," he snapped. "You went off chasing your little life, posting pictures with your city friends like we were some bad dream you escaped." I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it, because maybe part of me had wanted to forget. Maybe part of me had been angry. Still was. He leaned in, quieter this time. You want to know why Mom sent that letter? Why she told people you were doing something strange? Because she didn't know how to explain that her son just vanished. I looked down at the photo again. Younger me smiled back like he had no idea what was coming. Then Nate dropped the real bomb. She wanted me to tell you something. Said she didn't have the guts to say it herself. I waited. Braced myself. She doesn't want you to come to the funeral. The words landed like a punch. Not because she hates you, he added, but because she thinks it'll break you. I swallowed hard. Too late. And just when I thought I had nothing left to feel, Nate told me the one thing they had all kept secret, the real reason they never reached out after I left. We sat on a bench just outside the sliding glass doors of the hospital. The sun was going down, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Nate lit a cigarette, even though I remembered him quitting years ago. He offered me one. I shook my head. He exhaled slow, watching the smoke drift upward. Then he said it, real casual, like it was not about to rewrite everything I thought I knew. After you left, Dad lost his job. I blinked. What? 2 months after you skipped town. Got into it with his supervisor at the mill. They were already looking to downsize. He gave them an excuse. Why didn't anyone tell me? Nate snorted. Maybe because you were too busy playing city boy, pretending like you didn't come from dirt roads and rust. I let that slide. He kept going. Mom picked up part-time shifts at the diner. I was still in school, working nights at the feed store. It was bad, man. We were eating boxed mac and cheese 5 nights a week. Power got shut off once. No heat for 2 weeks. My stomach turned. I would have helped. With what? He snapped. You were barely scraping by yourself. Or do you think sending postcards and phone calls with no follow-through meant anything? I had no answer. He stared out across the lot. They didn't want you to know. Mom said you finally had your chance, and if you knew how bad it got, you'd come back and throw it all away. But you blamed me anyway. He shrugged. We needed someone to blame. That part was honest. Brutally so. He tapped the cigarette against the bench. You know what Grandpa said after all that? Sometimes the only way to grow a tree is to break off a branch. He looked at me. Guess you were the branch. I did not know what hurt more, what they went through, or the fact that they hid it to protect me. Or maybe it was the guilt. That ugly kind. The kind that gets in your throat and stays there. You should come to the funeral, I said. Even if Mom doesn't want me there. Someone should stand for him. He flicked the cigarette into the gravel. We already picked the pallbearers. Your name didn't come up. He stood, dusted off his jeans, and walked away. I sat there in the cooling night, thinking about everything I missed. Everything I thought I had escaped, only to find it waiting for me in a different form. I had been chasing peace, freedom, a future. But now, all I could think about was how much damage silence could do. And later that night, as I packed my bag to leave town again, I found something hidden in the bottom, something my mom must have slipped in when I wasn't looking, and it changed everything. I opened my duffel bag in the motel room just past midnight. The walls were paper thin, and some guy 2 doors down was yelling at a football game that had already ended. I ignored him, digging for a clean shirt when I felt something tucked between the lining and the side pocket. It was a letter, folded small, no envelope, written on the back of a church bulletin. I knew the handwriting instantly. My mother's. My chest tightened before I even unfolded it. I do not know how to say this out loud, so maybe this will have to do. You left. We were angry, but we were also scared. Not of you, but of what it meant. We built our lives around staying in one place. You were the first to step outside that. It felt like rejection, but deep down, I knew it was courage. I hope someday you will forgive us for making you feel like you were wrong for wanting more. I never said it before, but I am proud of you. I really am. And I miss my boy. Every single day. No name. No signature. Just those words, curling in the corners from where they had been crammed into the bag. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, holding the paper in my hands, reading it over and over again like it might disappear if I blinked too long. All the years I thought they resented me. All the silence that felt like punishment. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was shame. Maybe it was love wearing a disguise I never learned to recognize. I thought about going back to her house, knocking on the door, showing her the note, and asking why she never said it sooner. But I knew what she would say. I tried, because maybe that letter was her way of trying. And for the first time in years, something shifted. Not enough to fix everything, but enough to breathe again without that heavy weight on my chest. I folded the letter and slid it into my wallet, right behind my ID. Then I pulled out my phone. No voicemails. No texts. Just silence. But it no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a pause. Like something was still possible. But just when I thought I had reached the end of it all, the motel phone rang, and the voice on the other end asked a question I never expected to hear again. The motel phone rang twice before I even realized what I was hearing. I had not touched a landline in years. Something about the shrill tone made my gut twist. Like the past had found one more way to call me back. I picked it up, cautious. Yeah. There was a pause. Then a voice I had not heard since high school graduation spoke. Eli? I froze. Who is this? It's Pastor Rick. That name dropped me straight into a pew at First Baptist, sticky summer Sundays, and 2 long sermons. Pastor Rick had baptized me in a lake when I was 13. He gave me my first Bible. He also once told me I was losing my way when I skipped a youth retreat to apply for a job in the city. What's this about? I asked, keeping my voice flat. Another pause. Then, your mom gave me this number. Said you might not answer hers. Of course she did. I waited. She asked if I would speak with you. Said she's having a hard time saying things directly. What things? She wants you to come to the funeral. Changed her mind this morning. My stomach flipped. I thought she didn't want me there. She's scared, Eli. Scared you'll show up angry. Scared you'll make it harder. But also scared you won't show it all. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The note from my wallet still fresh in my mind. I don't want a scene, I said. Then do not make one, he replied. Silence stretched between us like a tightrope. I don't even know what I'm walking into. You're walking into grief. Same as the rest of them. And whether they say it or not, they miss you. I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. He softened his tone. Sometimes distance feels like safety, but it also builds walls that nobody knows how to climb. Someone has to be first to reach over. I stared at the chipped motel dresser and my duffel bag half-packed, and felt something cracking open. I had spent years building a life to prove I was more than what they saw me as. But maybe it was never about proving anything. Maybe it was just about healing what hurt. So I got in the car and drove toward the church, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw waiting in the back row. The church looked smaller than I remembered. Funny how buildings shrink when you stop being scared of them. I parked out back and slipped in through the side entrance. I was not ready for the front doors, for the greeters, for the eyes that might still carry judgment. The sanctuary was dim, just soft light filtering through those tall, stained glass windows. A few dozen heads bowed in quiet murmurs. The pews smelled like wood polish and worn-out grief. I scanned the room for my family. I saw Nate first, rigid, straight-backed, jaw-locked. Mom was beside him, dressed in black with a tissue crumpled in her fist. Her eyes were red. She looked older, smaller, like part of her had already been buried. I stayed in the back. I was not there to make a scene. I just wanted to say goodbye to the only man who ever told me I could leave and be more. Then I saw the back row, and my breath caught. It was Grandpa's journal, lying there, alone on the seat. The leather cover cracked with age. I knew it instantly. He used to scribble in it after Sunday lunch, hunched over with his glasses sliding down his nose, always saying, just writing down the things people forget. I stepped forward, slow, picked it up. Taped to the inside cover was a note, written in his hand. For Eli, you were never the one who left. You were the one who led. Keep going. I swallowed hard, gripping that notebook like it was a lifeline. The organ began to play. People rose. I stayed seated. I did not need the ceremony. I had already found what I came for. I waited until they all filed out, until the last hymn faded and the building emptied. Then I walked up the aisle alone. No fanfare, no tears, just a long overdue conversation between me and a wooden box draped in cloth. Thank you, I whispered, for seeing me when nobody else did. When I turned to leave, Mom was waiting at the end of the aisle. She did not speak, just nodded once. Her eyes softened. It was not forgiveness. Not completely, but maybe it was a start. Final reflection. As I drove back to the city, that journal rode in the passenger seat like a compass pointing forward. And I realized something. Leaving was not betrayal. It was survival. Some roots hold you down, choke you slowly until you forget you ever had wings. But others? Others teach you how to grow, how to stretch, reach, bloom in places no one thought you belonged. I did not forget where I came from. I just stopped letting it decide where I was going.